welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development Tactics podcast. As you can already see in the background, we have Gabor Matè. I think, by the way, it is a rolled R. You know what? Before I do anything, since the past few episodes and the past times that I've been talking about him, and it's been quite a lot recently, out of my own interest, I think that he's an interesting guy and he's definitely talking about stuff that is quite relevant for quite a lot of people. So let's check him out. Let's see what he is, who he is, what he does, maybe even education. I don't fucking know what we're gonna find here, but the past few days I didn't really know about it, and I don't like that. So Gabor Matè is an Hungarian-Canadian physician and author. He has a background in family practice and a special interest in childhood development, trauma, and potential lifelong impacts on physical and mental health, including autoimmune disease, cancer, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, which is ADHD. Yes, I can read very well. Addiction and a wide range of other conditions. His alma mater is University of British Columbia, probably doctoral, and or from blah, 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 blah. He emigrated to Canada with his family in 1956. He was a radical student during the Vietnam War era in the late 1960s and graduated with a BA Bachelor of Arts from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And he also earned his MD, so medical doctor, in general family practice in 1977. Yada, yada, yada. I also see ayahuasca there, so interesting. Now we know. Now we know a bit of background. Now we know a bit about him. And also here down in the field section, they say substance dependence, ADHD, and psychology. So this is probably definitely something to focus on, I would say. And also his website, drgabormatè.com. As far as I remember, there are some articles, so maybe checking that out. And also he is an author, which reminds me of, on the Tim Ferriss show, an episode with him, so Gabor Matè and Tim Ferriss, he stated and said that during the time, and it might be the newest book, I'm not quite sure, but while he was writing the book, he actually felt the need of getting therapy himself because it was such a difficult book to write. And I think that's amazing to hear. I think it is amazing to hear that they are walking their own talk, basically, to some degree, but just noticing and seeing that even physicians themselves and people that know a lot about psychology, know about various different things quite a lot, that they also need support, and that you maybe also should get support when it is about something as quote unquote, please take it with a grain of salt, trivial as just writing a book, a very difficult book to write. Anyway, today we're watching Is Addiction a Choice? Big Questions with Gabor Matè by the Penguin Books UK, probably his publisher, I don't really know, but we are gonna find out in a minute. So yeah, from September 15th, 2022, and once again, Penguin Books UK, Is Addiction a Choice? Big Questions with Gabor Matè. Let's see.
I'm certainly much more ripe than I used to be. A lot of us are normal and unhealthy at the same time. Can people change who they are? They need to become who they are. Hello, my name is Gabor Matè, and we're here at Penguin in England to answer some big questions. So the assumption in legal circles and throughout the whole, what's rightly called the criminal justice system, because it is a criminal system. The criminal justice system, in its criminality, makes the utterly unscientific, unfounded, and false assumption that people choose to be addicted. Now, first of all, I've worked with severely drug-addicted people in Vancouver's downtown east side. The Western was the most notorious area of drug use, by the way, is in Vancouver's downtown east side. In my 12 years of work there, I met not a single female patient who had not been sexually abused as a child. Now, who the heck chooses to be sexually abused as a child? All the men had been severely traumatized in multiple ways. Who the heck chooses to be traumatized in childhood? The addiction then is an attempt to soothe the pain that's imposed by childhood trauma. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, my ambition is to become a drug addict and break the law. I mean, think about it. It's a response to pain. Not only that, those traumatic experiences shape the brain itself, the physiology of essential brain circuits, in a way that'll bias that brain towards addictive behaviors, including with substances. I won't go into the neurophysiology of it now, but it's simply brain science. That's not even vaguely controversial. But of course, even physicians don't learn about it, let alone judges, lawyers, or prosecutors. Another point is that if we actually understand what an addiction is, we realize that drugs are only a small part of the addictive spectrum. I define addiction as manifested in any behavior that a person finds temporary pleasure or relief in, and therefore craves, but suffers negative consequences in the long term as a result of, but does not give up despite negative consequences. So craving pleasure, relief in the short term, harm, inability to give it up. That's what an addiction is. Now, in order...
So this might definitely be something to look out for in terms of behaviors in general. Like, okay, what am I doing that is short-term pleasure but long-term pain, or long-term, maybe even really quite bad consequences? Like, what about work addiction? What about working out addiction? What about so many things? I guess it's quite useful to ask oneself questions and see whether we can find certain addictions and or things that might become an addiction in the very near future, to, I don't know, maybe mitigate the risk. But yeah, I think it's also quite disturbing to hear that it's not being taught. It is something one has to realize, or one has to search for him or herself. Like, I mean, of course, education and the process of teaching people about medicine so they can become a doctor. I mean, I would really hope that it gets updated. The stuff they learn about it gets updated really frequently. Of course, I think it is difficult since there has to be probably a board of members, a board of just quite a lot of people to decide what is important and what isn't, and what is for specialized people and so on and so forth. But realizing and or figuring out, maybe just seeing it as an option. I don't want to say that this is definitely the case, that quite everything is rooted in childhood trauma and whatnot. I think it is a big part, but I'm just not educated enough to say yes. I totally believe that every addiction and maybe also ADHD that he has also been talking about and whatever is, and all of it is rooted in childhood trauma. But I think seeing it as an option and thinking about it and maybe thinking about ways in which we can deal with it, whether it is therapy or some other way that I just don't know about, I think is really important. So, period.
Notice in that definition, I said nothing about drugs. Yes, they could involve substances, some illegal like heroin, some even more toxic than heroin, but legal like alcohol. The definition also includes people who are addicted to gambling, to shopping, to eating, to work, to the internet, to pornography, to sex, to power, to a whole lot of other human behaviors. Why are we ostracizing a particular segment of the addicted population where virtually all of us in this particular stressful culture have some addictive patterns in our lives or have had? So it's criminal. And this whole belief that addiction is a choice is so unscientific as it would be laughable if its consequences weren't so tragic.
I just got really fucking shocked because of the music. I don't know if it is just me, but I thought, whoa, what the fuck is going on? Or, who is in my fucking house? But it might just be stereo. The next question is anyone, quote unquote, normal?
So, the myth of normal. What does it actually mean? Well, norm, first of all, is a statistic, but it doesn't say anything about healthy or not healthy. It just says it's in a certain range. Now, in medicine, there's legitimate use of the word normal, where the norm is actually identifiable with natural and healthy. But, for example, to give you an egregiously fanciful scenario, if everybody in London tortured their pets, then not torturing your pet would be abnormal. That's just a statistical statement. It's got nothing to do with health or well-being or naturalness. Now, in no society, a lot of behaviors, practices, policies, cultural norms are not just the norm in the statistical sense, in that most people engage in them, but they're also confused with healthy and natural, which, as I've been saying in this conversation, they're not. So that's what I mean, first of all, by the myth of normal. There's this myth that what we've got here is normal. It's not. Not when it comes to understanding human needs and human health in a holistic sense. The other sense in which I talk about the myth of normal is that there's this belief that there's those of us that are quote-unquote healthy, and then there's the rest of them who are abnormal. I'm saying no. First of all, health, whether physical or mental, is a spectrum. It's not that you can sort of delineate the healthy from the unhealthy. These are normal, these are not normal. That's a very dangerous game, number one. Number two, the illnesses of body and mind are actually normal responses to an abnormal cultural milieu.
Is society making us sick? Which is the next question, but I briefly want to hit on the one before, and I totally agree. It is a spectrum. I mean, there probably are just, tons and tons of people that are physically healthy, but not mentally, even though it is one system. I think it just, sometimes is the case. Maybe at least to oneself, and maybe one doesn't know that one's blood levels or any other other things are actually really fucked up. So do the checkups, I would say, just as a side note. Because a little bit of a story, because of, I think it actually was because of COVID, the COVID vaccine. I had this feeling of having pressure on my chest, and this my heart muscle is inflamed. I think it is called like that. I'm actually not quite sure. Anyway, so I because of that, and because of all the things that I had to check and whatever, I have actually figured out that there's something going on with my thyroids. So I have too less of thyroid hormone and whatever, and which might actually have been a big reason why I didn't feel that amazing and that good. So there are many things one should check up and check actually on a very regular basis. I don't know whether it's monthly or yearly or whatever. I think really depends on whatever it is all about. But I just want to underline, yes, it is a spectrum, and there are many different parts of the body, many different parts of the mind. So I think saying normal and abnormal, healthy and unhealthy, I'm sorry, doesn't really work. Which, maybe something good may also be something bad. Anyway.
The fact about human beings is that we're not solitary, isolated creatures, either physiologically or psychologically, emotionally or spiritually. So our physiology is bound up. In fact, it's a unit with our emotional and psychological spiritual existence. That's the reality of human beings. The second reality is that none of that can be separated from a social and emotional environment. So that how we feel about ourselves has a huge impact on our physiology, and how we feel about ourselves is very much determined by our relationships from in utero onwards. From our existence in the womb, we're being affected by the emotional states of our mothers. That's been demonstrated in multiple studies. It's not even in doubt. But the emotional states of our mothers depend on so much else other than just how they feel as individuals, on their social class, on their relationship with their partners, if any, on their own childhood experiences, including traumas, on the work they have to do, and many other social factors. And I'm only talking about in the womb. So already, children or infants of mothers who are stressed during pregnancy have biological markers of that stress in their bodies, already at birth. These influences act on us throughout our childhood, and of course throughout our adulthood.
what I still want to say and think is incredibly important to not forget about is, I don't know, for me it sometimes feels like, well, I have a feeling that it could lead to, people being like, okay, it's all, I don't know, it's all my mother's fault that I'm just depressed, or that I'm having ADHD and whatever. And, because many things may be rooted in childhood trauma, whether it is in the womb or just afterwards and then whatever. Definitely not everything, but probably maybe lots of things. But I don't know. I mean, it's not the mother to be blamed, at least I think when it comes to the womb. I mean, of course, there are stressful situations in life, and the mother herself might be stressed because of whatever happens, and then whatever. Like, we're not in a laboratory. We can't fully control our environment and fully control whatever is happening. And I don't know. I would find it deeply unfair to be like, yeah, it's my mother's fault, or it's the women's fault, or it's whatever. I think it may actually just be inevitable that there is some quote unquote trauma, or indeed trauma, childhood trauma, and or just trauma from the womb time. So I don't know. It might just be something to work on generally. I would even say that maybe, I just have a feeling, I don't know if this is correct, but birth also is a traumatic experience for every child, but I'm not quite sure about that. Anyway.
Adult existence, because what we are is what has been called biopsychosocial creatures. Our biology is not separable from our psychological, emotional experiences in a social context. So therefore, the nature of the world that we live in has much to do with our physiological health and with our mental health. Is this society making us sick? Let's look at the statistics. Anxiety is rising internationally. Childhood diagnoses of ADHD and other mental health conditions is rising internationally. The rate of autoimmune disease is rising. So in a sense, what I'm saying is that there's qualities of this particular society that actually make people sick. Some of those qualities are physical, such as the food that we eat and the pollutants in the environment. Many others are emotional and psychological, such as the ruthless competition that isolates people from each other. In Britain, they had to appoint a minister of loneliness. The rates of obesity are rising throughout the world dramatically. Children are now developing metabolic diseases that only adults used to have. In the United States, 70% of the population, of the adult population, is at least on one medication. 50% are on 2 medications. So yes, I'm saying in this book, that's my whole point, is that this particular culture, this particular society promotes illness. So that illness is not an aberrant event, it's not an abnormality, it's a normal response to what is basically a very unhealthy culture. And by culture, I don't just mean the physical aspects of it, but also the emotional, political, and social aspects.
Can people ever really change
who they are? They need to become who they are. My whole point in this book, and whatever I've learned as a physician and as a therapist.
And just by him saying that, it for me once again points out kind of the way he is, the way he maybe thinks about things, the way he is might not be too correct, but in terms of the therapeutic sense, I would say, at least, in the interview with Tim Ferriss, so actually Tim Ferriss interviewing him, there was a bit of a 2 times, by the way. There was one session where there then was basically a long therapy session for Tim, actually, kind of publicly, which is a different topic, but insane that publishing that and doing that live and then whatever. And in the second one, there was a bit of a smaller session among, of course, different questionnaires and questions and different other topics they have talked about. But here, when he says it's about being us and or becoming us, for me it feels like, and it's actually quite hard to describe now, for me it feels like the way I am and the way I feel things is okay. It's not about changing things. It's not about and maybe doing things differently. It may also be, it's really, really difficult to say, but we are doing things because of certain reasons. And it might be the reasons we have to change it. It might be the root cause that we have to change, and not the behavior. So I unfortunately, and this is really fortunate right now, I do not know the details of the conversation he had with Tim Ferriss and what it was all about, but I guess that Tim was like, okay, I think that I actually need to do this, and what is happening? To do this and that. And Gabor said, no, I think there are basically reasons. I would actually have to look that up, or we check that out then. Maybe I can find it. I don't think that I can find it that quickly, but I want to rewind it.
Can people change who they are? They need to become who they are.
They need to become who they are. And I find that incredibly inspiring. Just underlining that I think we ourselves are actually quite good enough, and the way we are and who we are at this point may not actually be who we are. Might also be due to society and our surroundings affecting us in a negative way, or just in a way. So I find that incredibly inspiring.
My whole point in this book, and whatever I've learned as a physician and as a therapist and a teacher and just as a human being, who myself had my own struggles to become myself. It's not a question of changing who we are, it's a question of becoming who we are. And my whole critique of this culture is it takes us away from who we are. And it's a struggle to get back to that. No, but can people achieve that? Yes. I can tell you personally, the answer is yes. Not that I'm claiming to be a fully cooked meal, but I'm certainly much more ripe than I used to be, in a very positive sense. I've seen all kinds of transformations in people. I've seen people with significant illnesses find in that disease some teaching that led them back to themselves, which actually promoted their healing. Can people change to become themselves? The answer is very much yes. In fact, it's a need of human beings. And when we're alienated from who we are, disconnected from who we are, we suffer. We suffer, and we suffer mentally or spiritually, and very often physically as well.
Does God exist?
Does God exist is one of those questions where one would have to really understand what the questioner means by God. I grew up as a militant atheist. Now, as a child, I mean. Now, I grew up in communist Hungary, leaving Hungary when I was 13 after the Hungarian Revolution. There was a joke in Eastern Europe. You could be honest and intelligent or a member of the Communist Party. In fact, you could be any two of those three things, but not all three at the same time. If you're honest and intelligent, you couldn't belong to the party. If you're honest and belong to the party, you couldn't be very intelligent, and so on. And I had the same relationship to God. God could be omniscient, all good, and all powerful. In fact, two of those three things, but not three at the same time. If God was all powerful and all good, then it doesn't know very much. Otherwise, why did he let my grandparents die in Auschwitz? And why did I, almost as an infant, end up in an oven myself? So he could be all good and all powerful, but he can't know much. Or he can be all powerful and all knowing, but they can't be very good.
Just underlining the fact that both his parents died in Auschwitz, a concentration camp and then being able to build a life, and I think many did that also. Thinking about Viktor Frankl himself, being in a concentration camp, maybe even Auschwitz. I don't remember that detail, but both of these people then being able to build such an incredible life, and also themselves building such great characters, I'd say. I mean, in terms of Gabor Matè, I can say I don't know Viktor Frankl personally, nor, by the way, Gabor. But I think this is also inspiring, very inspiring episode today. Being able to build such a great life, such a great personality, basically building a life from such a difficult standpoint or starting point. This is insane. Not to be like, oh, okay, Gabor's family died, and he himself is a PhD and whatever. So what are you doing? I don't want to say that. I just want to underline that difficult situations, and this is very subjective. We all face difficult situations. Some situations are very difficult for you that may not be difficult for me, and vice versa. It's all subjective. Therefore, also being like, you should not be, you should not be that unhappy. You should not be that depressed because the kids in Africa are having it way worse than you're having it. This is not a valid point, at least in my point of view, and it also doesn't help anyone. It is very subjective. We all have to work on those things our own and get out of those holes our own. Of course, with help, but it is our hole, it's not someone else's hole. So definitely something to underline there, but I still find it incredible and great to see, period.
And so on. So the God that I was faced with, this image of the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good entity that had some kind of a physical existence in some other realm that ruled this earth, was nonsense to me from the time that I knew my mind. That there's something greater and deeper in that concept that had to do with the oneness of all and the connection and the power and intelligence of the universe and the goodness that's around us. I had no concept of that. I'm not a worshiper, but I'm no longer uncomfortable with the word God. When I think of the word, I do mean it in that all-encompassing phrase for which the word itself is really quite inadequate. And it's inadequate mostly because of how it's being used. But that there's such an experience of holiness and godness, I fully accept that. Not that I fully have had it, but I also know that it's real. It's not a question of belief. And nobody can or should ever be talked into any particular way of understanding God. It's more an experiential reality than certainly as a concept or just as a rigid belief. So yes, in that sense, yes. In most other senses that the word is used, no. Thank you for watching. You can get my book, The Myth of Normal, in hardcover, audio, or ebook by clicking the link below in the description. And thanks again.
Once again, pointing out, where can I do this there? Is addiction a choice? Big questions with Gabor Matè from September 15th, 2022 by Penguin Books UK. What did I want to say? Check out this book if you're interested. I think that it probably is useful. I think it might just be also hugely about childhood trauma, but I don't really know. I shouldn't talk about things that I don't know or that I could actually know by just looking things up. Anyway, I wanted to say something important, but I don't remember. Right. Religion being a topic that, basically I should and don't want to talk about. But I think just in general, when a certain belief in something or in someone or whatever is helping you to go through life, is helping you to manage very difficult situations and very difficult also maybe decisions, why shouldn't you believe in those things? Unless, of course, you're harming somebody else or there are some drawbacks for somebody else. But when religion enables you to direct your life easier and better and whatever, why not? If this is not the case, then don't do it. But I think religion, and this may be one of the reasons why we have religions, they can help us and direct us into good directions. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to end the episode here. I hope that I'm able to shine some lights onto some good ideas or that Gabor did. But yeah, I'm going to see you next time.